The rain fell gently that afternoon, tapping on the metal roof and spreading the scent of wet earth through the air. In front of a small, quiet mosque standing in the middle of the city, a man sat inside a luxurious black car. Through a slightly open window, he watched people pass by. His name was Adrian, 35 years old, a young billionaire known for his cold and rational nature. In the business world, he was a legend. He had built his fortune from nothing, led a giant tech company, and possessed everything most people desired: power, luxury, influence. Yet for some reason, that afternoon, behind the glass of his car, he felt empty. He had just attended the funeral of an old friend, the only person who had known him before he became someone. As the soil covered his friend's body, Adrian suddenly realized, despite all his achievements, he had no answer to the simplest question: what is all this for? Without any clear purpose, he drove aimlessly until he stopped in front of that small mosque. He didn't know why, but something urged him to get out of the car and walk closer. The rain had eased, and on the mosque's veranda sat an elderly man with a white beard, wearing simple clothes and a warm smile. "Please have a seat, son," the old man said gently. Adrian looked around hesitantly, then sat down beside him on the wooden bench. They were silent for a while. The sound of birds and the whisper of the wind became the only melody around them. "Are you the imam here?" Adrian finally asked. The old man nodded slowly. "Yes, just the caretaker of this little mosque." "You look troubled, son. Is something bothering you?" Adrian stared straight ahead. "I don't know why I came here. I don't believe in religion. I believe in logic and hard work. But lately, everything feels empty." The imam smiled, his eyes sharp yet full of kindness. "Many people feel that way when they've achieved everything the world can offer. Because the world can give pleasure, but not peace." Adrian fell silent. Those words struck him softly but deeply. "And you believe," he said skeptically, "that religion can bring peace?" "Not religion as a label," replied the imam, "but the relationship between a human being and his creator. Peace comes when we know where we came from, why we live, and where we are going." Adrian lowered his head. "I've tried everything: money, power, philanthropy. But nothing has truly calmed me." The imam looked toward the rain that was starting to stop. "That water, son. Look." He pointed at a small puddle in front of them. "Water comes from the sky, falls to the earth, and then returns to the sky. That's how human life is. We come from him, live our days on earth, and eventually return to him. But most people get lost along the way." Adrian was silent for a long time. Those words pierced the wall of logic that had long encased his heart. "What should I do if I want to find that peace?" he asked softly. The imam smiled gently. "Begin by getting to know him, not through theory but through your heart. Read, reflect, and speak to him even if you don't yet know how. If your heart sincerely seeks, he will guide you." That day, Adrian did not immediately embrace Islam. He simply sat there for a long time, listening to the evening call to prayer, a sound that, for some reason, made his chest tremble. He went home that night with a head full of questions and a heart that no longer felt empty. In the following months, Adrian often returned to that little mosque. Sometimes he just sat on the same bench, talking with the old imam about life, the universe, and the meaning of happiness. Sometimes he watched the congregation praying from a distance, noticing the serenity on their faces. One night, after a long conversation, he said quietly, "I've been reading a lot about Islam, about Tawheed, about Prophet Muhammad, about the true meaning of life." He took a deep breath. "And I believe. I want to bear witness." The imam smiled with tears in his eyes. "All praise be to Allah, who guides whomever he wills." That night, beneath a sky filled with stars and the dim glow of streetlights, Adrian recited the Shahada with a trembling voice. Tears ran down his cheeks, the first tears after years of a dry heart. Months later, many were astonished. The billionaire, once known for his glamorous lifestyle, was now often seen in humble places. He founded a charity for orphans and built free schools. But what touched people most was that he never forgot to sit on that same wooden bench in front of the mosque every afternoon, talking with the old imam who had once opened the door to his heart. When reporters asked what had changed him, he simply smiled and said, "There are things money can never buy: peace, meaning, and the light that guides the soul. I found them on a bench in front of a mosque, through a simple conversation with an old man who introduced me to God. And ever since then, whenever the rain fell, Adrian would look up at the sky with a calm smile, remembering the day when a single drop of rain led him to the encounter that changed his life forever. Since the night he uttered the Shahada, Adrian's life slowly changed direction. Not through lightning or great miracles, but through small steps that gradually transformed his soul. Every morning, he now woke up earlier not to read financial reports, but to gaze at the dawn sky and listen to the adhan for far. He learned how to perform wudu, though at first he was clumsy and often made mistakes. He learned to place his forehead on the ground, and there he felt something he had never experienced in his entire life. A beautiful sense of humility. But the journey toward light is never without tests. Adrian's change became the talk of the business world. News that a famous billionaire had embraced Islam spread quickly. Some praised him, but many mocked him. He must be depressed. A new publicity stunt. He's lost his way. His company's stock briefly fell, as investors feared he might start making emotional decisions. Some of his old colleagues distanced themselves, believing he had been swept up by fanaticism. One night, a business friend came to visit him at the office. "Adrian, I'm saying this because I care. You have a huge future ahead of you. Don't ruin it with these things. You know how Islam is seen in the world. People won't understand." Adrian looked at him for a long time, then smiled. "I used to think I knew what I was looking for, but it turns out I was just running in circles. Now I know my purpose in life. If the world doesn't understand, that's the world's problem." His friend sighed. "You've changed." "Yes," Adrian replied calmly. "I finally started to live." In the days that followed, Adrian began using his wealth for something different. He founded a free educational foundation that taught not only science and technology but also humanity and spirituality. He refused to call it an Islamic school. "This isn't about labels," he said during the opening ceremony. "It's about instilling meaning about who we are and what we live for." But away from the cameras, there was a small habit he never abandoned every evening. He would go to that small mosque, sit on the same wooden bench, and talk with the old imam who had once guided him. Sometimes they didn't talk much. They just sat in silence, watching the sun sink slowly behind the mosque's dome. One evening, Adrian noticed the imam looked weak. His breath was heavy, his aged hands trembling. "Ustaz, are you feeling unwell?" The imam smiled. "This body is growing tired, my son, but my heart is at peace. I'm happy to see you growing in faith." Adrian bowed his head. "If not for you, I would never have known Islam." "Don't say that," the imam said softly. "I was only the messenger. The one who knocked on your heart was him." As time passed, Adrian became a different man. He still led his company, but now he led with his heart. He treated his employees not as numbers, but as trust. He refused projects that harmed the environment, even if they were worth billions. He learned to pay zakat and channeled much of his wealth to help others. Yet behind it all, there was one habit he never changed. Every Friday afternoon, after the affairs of the world were done, he would walk to that little mosque, sit on the wooden bench by the door, and pray in silence. To passers-by, he was just a simply dressed man gazing at the sky. No one knew that he was once a billionaire who had lost his way until he found God on that very bench. One day, a young man approached him in that same place. "Sir, I often see you sitting here. May I ask you something?" Adrian smiled. "Of course, go ahead. I'm confused about my life. I feel empty. I work hard, but it all feels meaningless. What should I do?" Adrian looked at the young man for a long while, then repeated the words he had once heard years ago. "Start by knowing him. Not with theory, but with your heart. Speak to him even if you don't know how. If your heart sincerely seeks, he will guide you." The young man fell silent, then bowed his head, as if those words had touched something deep within him. And at that moment, Adrian realized he had just become like the old imam who once guided him. The light he once received, he was now passing on. That evening, the sky was golden. A gentle rain began to fall, dripping onto the leaves, carrying the same scent of earth as the day it all began. Adrian looked up at the sky, closed his eyes, and smiled. "Thank you, God," he whispered, "for finding me on the bench in front of a mosque." A few months after Adrian embraced Islam, his life slowly found a new rhythm. He still came to the small mosque almost every evening, sitting on the wooden bench where he had first met the old imam. Day by day, their bond grew closer, not merely as teacher and student, but like father and son. One afternoon, as the sky turned orange, the imam arrived carrying 2 cups of hot tea. "Sit down, my son. Today I want to introduce you to someone," he said with a gentle smile. Moments later, from inside the mosque, a young woman appeared, wearing a soft white hijab. Her face was calm, her steps graceful, and her eyes radiated serenity. "This is my daughter, Hannah," said the imam. "She usually helps teach the children at the madrasa behind the mosque." Adrian stood and bowed politely. "Assalamu alaikum." "Wa alaikum assalam," Hannah replied softly, with a simple yet soothing smile. From that meeting on, they often crossed paths in the mosque courtyard. There were no long conversations, only short greetings or exchanged smiles. Yet each time their eyes met, Adrian felt something different, not a worldly admiration, but the same peace he had felt the first time he bowed down in prayer. One night, after the Isha prayer, the old imam called Adrian to sit with him on the bench in front of the mosque. The night breeze blew gently, carrying the scent of jasmine from the garden. "Adrian," he began softly, "you've become like my own son. I see great change in you. Your heart is now pure and calm." Adrian looked at him with deep respect. "It's all because of your guidance, Ustaz." The imam smiled. "I'm only a messenger, my son, but I wish to ask something of you with good intention." He paused for a moment, then continued, "I am old now. My daughter, Hannah, needs someone who can guide her, protect her, and walk with her on the path of goodness. In you, I see, though you come from a hard world, a heart that is gentle and sincere. So if you are willing, I would like to give her to you in marriage." Adrian was stunned. He lowered his gaze, trying to steady his breath. He had never imagined receiving such an honor. With a trembling voice, he replied, "Ustaz, I feel unworthy. I am still learning, still full of shortcomings. But if this is a trust, and if Hannah consents, I will accept it with the intention to honor and guide her in goodness." The old imam looked at him for a long time, then smiled peacefully. "Inshallah, that is an answer that brings peace to the heart." A few weeks later, in that small mosque, a simple yet deeply meaningful wedding ceremony took place. There was no luxury, no glitter, only a few congregants, the fragrance of flowers, and the golden light of the afternoon sun filtering through the windows. Adrian sat facing the imam, who was now not only his teacher but also his future father-in-law. With a calm voice, the imam recited the marriage contract, and Adrian answered firmly, "I accept the marriage of Hannah binti Yusuf, with a simple ring as dowry and a promise to guide her on the path of Allah." For a moment, the room fell silent. Then tears flowed down Hannah's cheeks and the imam's as well. The congregation softly uttered, "Allahu Akbar," their voices filled with emotion. Imam Yusuf, the old man's name, embraced his new son-in-law with trembling hands. "My son, care for her not as your possession, but as a trust from God. Love her through prayer, not pride, and never let the world harden your heart again." Adrian could only bow his head and whisper, "Inshallah, Ustaz." That night, after all the guests had left, Adrian and Hannah sat together in the mosque courtyard beneath the gentle moonlight. "Are you happy?" Adrian asked softly. Hannah smiled. "I'm happy not because I married you, but because I know we walk the same path seeking Allah's pleasure." Adrian looked at her and said, I used to chase everything, but I've learned that happiness isn't found at the top of the world, it's here, beneath the sky, in front of a small mosque, with someone who has faith." Hannah smiled again and lowered her gaze. And in that quiet night, the moonlight seemed to embrace them both, two souls brought together not by human plans, but by divine love. Years passed. Imam Yusuf finally returned to the mercy of Allah in his old age. Adrian and Hannah cared for his burial with love and tenderness. Afterward, Adrian continued the imam's role, becoming the caretaker of the small mosque teaching children, and guiding anyone who came with a restless heart. The wooden bench where he had once spoken with the old imam still stood there. Sometimes Adrian sat there with Hannah, teaching the children to memorize prayers. Each time the rain fell, they would look up at the sky and smile, remembering the day it all began. A man who had lost his way, a wise old imam, and a woman who became the light after the rain. This story is a work of fiction, written to convey inspiration and moral reflections about the search for life's meaning, sincerity, and the beauty of faith. All characters, names, and events in this video are not based on real stories, but are purely the result of the author's imagination. May this story serve as a gentle reminder for all of us that guidance belongs only to Allah, and every heart has its own path to find Him.